Hi students, welcome back to the second part of this video on the endocrine system. So the first part we're looking at adrenaline, the second part we'll be looking at the effects of insulin and glucagon. Now adrenaline is produced, as mentioned earlier on, from the adrenal medulla, which is located on top of the kidney, sort of like an extension of it. Okay, so whenever there stimulus from the external environment, so for example, if there is a motorbike coming at a very high speed to you, or if there is someone threatening your life, this stimulus is being sent to the brain. So once the brain processes that stimulus from your environment and deduce that it is a life-threatening situation, or it can even be a nervous situation, these nerve impulses will then be translated in the brain, and the brain will take the appropriate action to produce adrenaline from the adrenal medulla. So basically it signals the adrenal medulla to secrete adrenaline. Now adrenaline enables quicker reaction time in the following manners as you see in the graph below. So it affects a wide range of organs over here. It doesn't just affect one, but you can see how as the adrenaline rushes throughout the entire circulatory system, it affects more than one. The impact of adrenaline is rather fast because the moment adrenaline is being secreted, there will be increased heart rate. So the increase in the heart rate will result in the increased pumping of the heart and increase of the circulatory system for the adrenaline to reach to different parts of the system. Okay, so by breathing faster itself and deeper, you have got more oxygenated blood that is traveling throughout the body system, which increases the rate of aerobic respiration so that you can have increased ATP production and more energy that is being utilized. So likewise, there will be increased conversion of glycogen to glucose, so more glucose can be used over here in the event that you need to be able to take flight immediately or to fight back the situation almost immediately. So when you have got increased breathing, one of the side effects is of course hypertension and increase in heart rate. Palpitation is the increase in the heart beating. Okay, pupil dilation will enable more light to enter, which is why when you are in an extremely nervous situation, you feel as though like everything is very bright around you. Okay, to take in more information and for your brain to process information faster. This is also probably why some people perform faster under the effects of adrenaline when they do last minute work, or the brain tends to retain more information, but this is only for very short periods of time and not advised for long term. Okay, now during this period, other processes such as digestion, assimilation, these will be stopped because these processes are not deemed as life essential to the body. Okay, so the body is then focused on survival mode and it will do whatever it takes to increase the chances of survivability. Okay, so this is a reflex arc. You can't control the body system in secretion of adrenaline. So once you have a stimulus, the sensory neuron relay to the relay, and then after that you have got the effector, the motor neuron, which relays the information to the effector, which is the adrenal medulla in this sense. Now, the insulin and glucagon is a negative feedback loop. So most of us are familiar with insulin because in diabetes or diabetic patients, insulin is usually lacking. Okay, so our own body is able to able to produce its own insulin itself. So when the blood sugar level increases after, let's say, a meal, you have got digestion of your carbohydrates all the way down to become glucose in the small intestines. So this glucose will be absorbed into the bloodstream, be it via diffusion or active transport at the small intestines. So from here, the increase in the blood level, this one on the left, the increase in the blood sugar level, okay, will be detected by the brain, and the brain itself will then stimulate or signal the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas to increase the production of your insulin hormone. So once insulin hormone is being secreted, what happens is that you have got conversion of your glucose to glycogen itself. So glucose to glycogen will then be converted, and glycogen, being a polysaccharide, will be stored in the liver and muscles. Okay, now likewise, when there is a drop in blood glucose level, be it after a run or during the fasting period, or maybe through the night itself, okay, you have got quite several hours of not eating. So from here, the drop in the blood glucose level itself will stimulate the islets of Langerhans, this one the pancreas, okay, to secrete glucagon. Okay, glucagon acts in the opposite direction or opposite way of insulin. So instead of converting glucose to glycogen, now glucagon, what it does is that it will convert whatever stored glycogen back into glucose. Now glucose is now able to enter into the blood system itself. Once it enters into the bloodstream, now glucose is able to be used for cellular respiration to produce energy. Okay, so of course, in this scenario on the left, when you have got increase in blood glucose level and insulin secretion occurs normally, but in patients with diabetes, what happens is that insulin production becomes ineffective. Okay, so when insulin production becomes ineffective, then the patient will have to inject insulin themselves in order to achieve this level. Otherwise, high concentration of glucose in the blood can also, high concentration of glucose in the blood can lead to fainting spells or even seizures. Likewise, if you have got over secretion of insulin, or the patient took additional injection, additional volume of the dose required for insulin, now there too much glucose would be converted into glycogen. Okay, so we don't want too much to be converted into glycogen, we just want the right amount to be converted so we can still maintain a normal level. Okay, so when too much glucose is being converted, now the brain doesn't have enough glucose to function on. Okay, so it will cause shock and even unconsciousness. Okay, so diabetes is over here, just a little bit into it. So symptoms of diabetes: constant high blood sugar, wounds doesn't heal very fast. Okay, often the patient will be asked to go for a urine test, and they will use a dipstick to determine whether there is the glucose present in the urine. Extremely thirsty and urinating often. You have got two types of diabetes: type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is usually happening on when a patient is extremely young, and we call it a juvenile onset diabetes. Now this is often due to a genetic issue or even a viral infection. So in this situation, there is insufficient insulin that is being produced, and patient will require regular injections. Okay, now on the other hand, type 2 diabetes is usually due to late onset, and is usually late onset and often due to diet, environmental, or even work-related stress. Okay, so in this case, the level of insulin might not be low, but the body has so-called forgotten how to use the insulin. Okay, so we call this type of patients at times known to be insulin resistant. Okay, so in type 1, we will have to inject the insulin. Now type 2, depending on the severity of the diabetes, some can get away with adjusting the content of carbohydrate, because after all, carbohydrate gets digested to glucose, and at the end of the day, insulin affects extra glucose to conversion to glycogen. So when you regulate the amount of carbohydrates, that can in turn help the insulin converting glucose to glycogen. Okay, some people might require intake of oral medications for insulin. Okay, but the ones that have really bad type 2 diabetes will still require injectable. So it really depends on the severity of it, unlike type 1, which do require insulin injection because they have no ability to produce it. Alright, now that's the end of this chapter for the endocrine. Thank you for listening.